Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Getting In, a college coach conversation. My name's Ian Fisher. I'm your host today. This show is airing on my birthday, April 25th. So, those of you who are listeners, I think you might still have some time if you've downloaded the episode today to get me a card or a present. You can find me, just care of College Coach. Send it along. We've got a really great show for today. We're going to talk a little bit about different kinds of institutions, liberal arts colleges, polytechnic institutions, what the major differences are there, and some examples of each. But before we get into that topic, we want to talk a little bit more about financial literacy. So, joining us today, we've got my colleague from the college finance team, Michelle Smoley. Hi, Michelle. Welcome back to the show.
Hi, Ian, and happy birthday.
You've got to say happy birthday now, even though the birthday is a week from now, because when this becomes public, it will be my birthday. So I thank you. I accept that. Appreciate it. Now you said it's Financial Literacy Month here in April.
It is.
It's also the month where we pay our taxes, which
Yes.
is awful for most people, right? It's no fun. But we want to talk today about a concept that is new to me, and I think new to most folks, and it's called loud budgeting. And so when I first encountered this concept, I was like, what are you talking? What is this? What could this possibly mean? I remember there's a scene from The Office where Michael Scott just yells, I declare bankruptcy, which sounds like loud budgeting, but it's probably not that. So can you walk us through for our listeners what is meant by loud budgeting if they're unfamiliar?
Sure. So this is really a new viral money trend that is uh, originally came through TikTok.
Okay.
The creator was Lucas Battle, and he's the one that really should be credited with this term. But loud budgeting really encourages people to be more open and transparent about their finances. So uh, instead of maybe feeling shame or embarrassment because I don't have the resources to maybe go on vacation that my friends want me to go on. It's okay now, due to loud budgeting, to empower yourself and say, you know what, that's not a financial priority for me. So thanks, but um, I need to put my resources somewhere else.
It's interesting because this is definitely a new term to me, right? And I had no idea what loud budgeting was. But as I was reading the definition, and as you shared a lot of information with me in advance of the show today, which I appreciate because it always makes me look smarter. So thank you. It sounded like a concept that maybe has a new name, but that I would expect that college finance experts like yourself are familiar with this idea and maybe have been counseling around this idea for a while. Is that right? And what sort of is your understanding as you encountered this term and then thought about how it fit into your sense of the financial landscape?
Sure. Actually, I kind of would compare it and say that personal financial wellness has kind of come full circle. You know,
Okay.
it used to be step one, if you want to manage your money, you're going to create a budget. Well, then there was some negative nuances around the term budget. So then people moved to, okay, let's create a spending plan,
Right.
you know. So and now it's kind of come back to this new term that's loud budgeting. So we're back to using, you know, really an old, it's a new term for an old concept, and it really is about choosing and basing your financial priorities based on your own values and not feeling that it's not, you know, that it's not okay to say no to something. And it's, you know, if we're working with college parents, for example, uh, let's say that their friends ask them to go out for dinner, and that's really not in their spending plan or budget. It's not really a priority for them right now because they're going to send Joey to college and they're really trying to cut back. And so loud budgeting would be them simply saying, thanks for the invitation, but we're going to pass because we're really trying to pinch our pennies right now because Joey's going to college in the fall.
Now, you mentioned this sort of connotation of the word budget that was negative in some respect. Is that because there's a definition that makes it feel sort of like it's low quality, or that you are, to use your term, a penny pincher? Like, was it just like negativity around that idea that people moved away from budget into something called a spending plan?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, if you're using it as a verb, budgeting
Yeah,
assimilates that, oh, you don't have enough resources to go around. And so you are pinching your pennies. But
yeah,
quite honestly, most of us don't have all the financial resources that we would maybe like to have to do all the things that we want to do. And so, therefore, again, what maybe Ian, you would spend your money on and what is a priority for you is probably going to be very different than what is a financial priority for me.
yeah. Boxes and boxes of Skittles in my case. It's just that's what I spend all my extra money on. That's not true, but my kids would love
Mine
it
would
if I
be,
did that.
yeah, mine would be shoes. So, very
I, I
different
I do
concept
like
there.
shoes. I think we're probably into different kinds of shoes, but I also am pretty into shoes.
Awesome.
Now this is a college finance podcast, right? And so this is a concept that's bigger than college finance. But you already gave one example, and I think there are some other examples of reasons that people might want to embrace this, whether it's a student going off to college or families who are saving for college. Can you talk through some of the ways that people can start to embrace this trend, and feel really good about it?
Sure, absolutely. Like, for example, a student might be maybe your friends want to go to a concert, and concert tickets for anyone um, in today's world are quite spendy, and a lot of
Sure.
times that means, oh, I have to go buy a new outfit. I have the concert tickets. It might mean overnight costs, and we're probably going to eat out and maybe have some beverages during that time. So it really could become quite an expensive outing. And so, not every college student, maybe not every young adult or even adult has the resources or wants to put their resources into that type of situation. So, with loud budgeting, it's really okay to say loud and proud, I'm going to pass. I actually am working this weekend. I'm going to work the next, 6 weekends because I'm really trying to save up for a car right now.
Yeah.
And it really provides that sense of empowerment and accountability. I think it can help reduce some financial stress and anxiety because I grew up in the era, and I remember when I was in college that I didn't come from an affluent family, so I didn't have all the name brands that everybody else had, and um, I couldn't go do all the things like spring breaks and all of that. So it 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 made me feel embarrassed. It made me feel, somewhat shameful at that point because we couldn't afford that, and others could, but
Yeah.
now it's kind of uh, let's turn it into a positive as opposed to a negative.
Yeah, it's these social forces I think are really powerful, especially for students who are starting college. And when you show up on campus, everybody's there, and it's not as though there's a sign above your head that says how much financial aid you're getting or whether your parents are putting money in account for you every single week. And that's great because people are on a level playing field. But then as social opportunities begin to present themselves, you'll find that there's some real differentiation among students. And what I most love, I think, about what you're describing about loud budgeting is not just the way that it helps students to be really clear on what their priorities are with their money, because I think that that's fantastic, but also the way that it starts to allow social conversation about money to be less taboo. So that if another friend hears you say, you know what, I'm saving up for a car, I can't do the concert, I hope you have a great time. Then another friend, hears, well, I actually have some different priorities for my money as well. And now I don't feel like I have to hide those priorities. And so there's a great element I think of this openness that can be excellent. As I was reading through some of the info that you provided in advance here, I was wondering what the potential drawbacks of a loud budgeting approach could be. I think there are maybe some that are psychological, right? Like it feels odd to talk about what I'm earning, or it feels strange to stake a position around how much I want to spend. But outside of those effects, I'm wondering if there's any kind of negative influence of a loud budgeting approach.
I can't really think I would say anything negative. It really promotes positivity because it's helping people maybe curb their spending and holding them accountable to their budget or their monthly spending plan. And again, I really feel from a positive perspective, just being able and feeling empower empowerment to say,
Yeah.
no, that's not, my priority right now, and I'm doing something else with my funds right now.
So I can imagine this conversation being something that is a low hurdle for students to clear if they're in college or maybe in high school and they're talking about their resources. I can imagine it's a little bit different when we're talking about families and
Mm-hmm.
how, especially parents, talk with their students. Now, as college finance experts, I know that your team is big time proponents of talking to your students about college financing options and cost of college and everything. How about loud budgeting and how that's going to fit in terms of these family dynamics with parents in the house and high school students who are college bound? Are there things that parents can apply to their practice that might be helpful here?
Absolutely. I think first, just opening up the conversation and speaking about finances and what resources the family has available to pay for college.
It's all right. It sounds like there's a dog that also wants to get involved. This is loud budgeting from the dog's perspective.
Yeah,
Um,
very
it's,
loud
it's
budgeting.
very intrusive, but also you got to let them know, right? When there's a priority that you have, in this case, maybe somebody at the door dropping off the mail, then you got to announce that presence. But parents and students, what's your thought? Did the barking?
Yes,
Okay,
sorry about
sweet.
that. Terrible timing.
It's all right. We got
Um,
to roll with it.
I do feel it opens up the platform for the conversation and for the parents to provide some financial transparency. A lot of times, and I, see it all the time, especially uh, lately, where the parents are allowing the students to drive that college admission process and make those decisions without looking at what resources or even knowing what resources are available, not knowing if the family has the ability to save, not understanding maybe what their debt situation may be and how much debt could be incurred um, based on lack of scholarships and maybe merit dollars. And so again, I think it's an opportunity for to open up the conversation and have the talk as we typically kind of refer to it, to loudly speak about what is available to pay for college, what the family is willing to maybe take on for debt, and to give the student a sense of, okay, do you really want to graduate in 4 years with a $1,500 a month student loan payment? Have you really, looked at what your earning potential is at the end of your college career? And is that payment going to be affordable? Um,
And
so,
it's a good question to ask. And I'm even connecting the dots a little bit further here, where if you ask a student, is $1,500 a month something you want to take on? I think most students would say no. But if you're engaging in this transparency and this communication with students, if you're showing them your budget, they don't have to just imagine it. They can also say, well, I've looked at mom and dad's budget and I've got a sense of what our household income is. And I don't know where I would put a $1,500 monthly loan payment given all of the other commitments that they have. And so there will be this inevitability around budgeting later on in the process, whether you're going to accommodate choices that you make now or choices you make in the future, you still have to make space for that spending plan, right? And so it feels like that's a really smart way to connect those dots. You also pointed out to some other tips that kind of don't intuitively connect to loud budgeting, but as I was thinking about it, make a lot of sense. So some other recommendations that you'd have for folks who might want to adopt this policy, who are going to be more communicative and transparent about where they're allocating their resources. Can you share those with our audience?
Sure. I think about ways that encourage people to spend money that maybe you don't want to spend,
Yeah.
whether it's online shopping. Uh, I can tell you from a personal perspective, it's way too easy because I have a credit card attached to my PayPal and my Apple Pay, and I can spend a lot of money in a matter of 5 minutes, and then it's buyer's remorse sometimes.
Yeah.
So one thing to do is maybe make a rule that you wait 48 hours or you wait a certain amount of time before you make that purchase. Maybe opt out of those emails. I mean, anytime I go to a store, they're like, what's your email address? And they're emailing me and text messaging. So and unfollow maybe tempting name brands on social media. uh, think about things that trigger spending. Maybe it could be people you hang out with. I've had that to where, maybe people are spending money that I don't have the resources for, and they're doing things with their money that I don't feel are a priority, and that's okay. But that doesn't mean I have to put myself in that situation if that is not what and where I want to put my money.
That's right. And you never know exactly the priorities of the people that you're spending time with. It could be that they're allocating resources here because they spend less on something else that you prioritize. And one of the things that loud budgeting, I think, is advocating for is a little bit more transparency on that front so that you've got a sense of how the chips are falling across everyone at the table. I also think like you're really highlighting something very important about habits. We in our family made a decision that we were going to cancel our Amazon Prime account. And I am shocked at how much less shopping I do just as a result of that action. Because when I go online, it's like, well, it's going to be here in 5 days and I'm not going to get that free shipping. Like, is this really worth it to me? And just in going through that question and answer with myself, I'm spending much less than I would otherwise. I also, with social media, if you unfollow certain accounts where it's just like puts you in the mood to buy stuff, you're buying less. And so, these things work. Prime works. It encourages spending. Social media, there's advertising. It's very successful for a reason. And so understanding how all of those things are influencing spending decisions and looking at the data when you make changes in your habits, I think it's really interesting to be able to reflect back on.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else that you want folks to know about this concept? I know it's in many ways it's kind of tried and true. We're giving it a different name than we have historically. But anything else that you think people can engage with to understand this better and embrace it more fully?
Um, Again, I feel it's an old concept. Um, and it's not that maybe you don't have the money or maybe you can't spend the money, but it's really comes down to financial priorities and what your financial priorities are based on your own values. And that is kind of the key lesson in personal finance and financial wellness. And we all have limited resources, and we need to, and with loud budgeting, it's a positive aspect to now say I'm saving for this, or I'm not going to spend money on this anymore.
Yeah.
And that's okay. There's no judgment.
Yeah.
And embrace what and use your resources for what you value, not what your friends or your family or the neighbors value.
Yeah, I was you thinking about priorities and planning and just sort of reminded me like this isn't like, oh, this afternoon I'm just going to tell my friends I'm not spending money on that, but you have to actually sit down and plan a little bit too, right? There is some thinking about your priorities. You've got to take stock of, what your income is and what your commitments are. But from there, I think that you can be a little bit more clear about what those priorities look like. Thanks,
Absolutely.
Michelle. This has been really interesting. I'm glad I know now what loud budgeting is. I'm not on TikTok, so you had to bring it to me for me to understand. Great to have you on the show. We'd love to have you back again, and I'm sure you'll come back, right?
Yes. Thank you so much, Ian. Take
Of
care.
course. All right, folks, when we come back, we're going to talk about liberal arts colleges, polytechnic institutes, some of the differences there, and some great examples of each. So don't go away.